This is Alan Karpik with the legendary David Boudia. And David, gold medalist diver, but also a Purdue icon, and needs no introduction, but a very tough week, certainly for anybody that was close to Purdue athletics, but especially for someone like you that had a close relationship with Morgan Burke. And first, maybe give you some reflections on that and what you thought when you first heard the news, and how you're now 4 or 5 days later, kind of trying to make sense of all of it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Alan. So we were actually training on Monday, and we had just finished practice. We had the guy in charge of the pool, Dave Frazier, walk in, and I had already walked over to the locker room and then to head off for home. And I looked at my phone and saw it and had to confirm that it was actually true. And I think it stuns a lot of people. Just because if you know Morgan Burke, yeah. I have seen him since my freshman year in 2008, every single day at the pool, training. Mm-hmm. And so he would do his workout for hour and a half, and just a regimented man. And so I think that's what's kind of saddened. And you said it earlier, Alan, perfectly, that, you look at Morgan, you think he's going to be that 96-year-old man waving at the basketball games. And I think you see more and more news articles come out, and I think it's more surreal just because of who he was for the Purdue, for the Boilermaker Nation, and what he did for student athletes in the program at Purdue.
Yeah. It is not, you hate to oversimplify anything in this type of situation, but a guy like David Boudia or other very accomplished athletes, that emphasis and that desire that from Morgan to put emphasis into swimming and diving and Olympic sports. We always say, if you're cheering on David Boudia in London, you're cheering on Morgan Burke. I mean, put that into perspective from your standpoint and his relationship with you.
Without Morgan Burke, we wouldn't have a world-class aquatic center like we have, for the work he did to raise funds to build it, and his love and devotion for swimming and diving program. Purdue wasn't even on my radar, and Morgan made the best hire of any head coach. I might be biased, but Adam Soldati. Yeah. And so the moment I came onto campus for my visit, you see just this spectacular facility. And I guess I was kind of taken back, because Purdue was in my backyard, but it wasn't something that I was interested in until I got to the campus. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Purdue athletic program is a reflection of the leadership. And you see what Morgan has done, just the faithfulness of leading Purdue athletics at that time. And I think that's what I wanted. I wanted that family cohesiveness. And so I decided to come to Purdue. And I remember in my freshman year, we have student athletes take a EDPS class, so a 1-credit class, and teaches you the ins and outs of what it means to be a Purdue Boilermaker student athlete. And he definitely embodied it. But I remember my first class, he was the one teaching it, I guess. And afterwards, I was fresh off my first Olympics. He came up to me and said, I want to tell you something. I know that Purdue, we lack wit on the 10-meter platform. And so if someone doesn't know diving, you do synchronized diving, and you need a wider platform. And the very first thing, he was like, we're going to make this better. And so that's what he was. He was a cultivator and wanting to, he wasn't pleased. He wasn't settling for just good enough. And he was a competitor at heart. And, I think Adam said this perfectly. He says that, it's not my job to make you a champion, but what I can do is I can create an environment where a champion can be made. And Soldati would not be able to do that without Morgan Burke. And it's not just the Purdue athletes who have accomplished things. Morgan was the type of person where I would not be surprised if he knew every single student athlete's name from when he first started to, present day. And he made you feel like he was your best friend from 10 years ago. Just genuine. He looked you in the eye when he spoke to you and cared about you as a athlete, but more importantly, as a person. And I think that was I think that's what took me back is I looked at a lot of other athletes at different universities. And when I made the decision to go professional in 2011 and forgo my senior year of eligibility for Purdue, one of the things that Morgan said for the next 2 years when I saw him every day at the pool is he wasn't, he cared about diving, but he was more conscious of, you need to get your degree, you need to finish school, you need to follow through with things. And so you have someone like that who, we have a relationship, but it's not at a super deep level, but he is continually trying to teach and love and cultivate the things around him to make them better.
One of the most competitive persons you'll ever be around. I mean, did that ever wear off? I mean, how can you tell David Boudia how to dive? He's not doing that, I'm sure. But did he ever stoke that competitive juice? I mean, and you've talked in interviews past about, you grew up when you first got here. You had to mature emotionally, and that was a process for you. Did he have a role in that, or did he ever have a role in, kind of egging you on to get to another level?
I think when you talk to him, I think you leave a conversation automatically like that. And so there's a lot of times where I came into practice, even after 2012 Olympics, and I would speak to him as we cross paths in the parking lot, and he lights a fire under you. He says 4 words, and you're like, all right, let's get to work at the pool. But it's funny that behind every good man is a good wife. And I was just thinking about Kate a couple of days ago, and one of the things I thought of was when the baseball facility opened up, there was a big banquet, and I don't remember the conversation exactly, but you could tell Morgan was saying something competitive and trying to get on this train, and Kate she had that wife look like, okay, Morgan. So you can tell Kate and Morgan just had a good balance of life and marriage. And so I know I just saddened for her loss. And so it's, yeah.
Yeah, just it is hard, and it was a good complementary relationship. I think she and I don't know Kate well at all. I certainly observed, and she certainly would protect him, but also tell him to take the foot off the gas now and then too, which I think is a good thing. Sometimes when your spouse, as we can all relate to, they can really be helpful if they just kind of help you reflect a little bit. When you look at, take me back to London and that amazing moment, one of the great moments, not only in Purdue sports history, but in Olympic history. What was your discussion like when you first saw Morgan after winning the gold, and just that experience with him in that opportunity?
I guess to go a little bit before that, I don't think Purdue or John Purdue Club has ever rallied behind an Olympic athlete to the point where they bring a whole congregation of members and people who love Purdue to an Olympic Games. And so the amount of work Rita did with Morgan and Nancy Cross to get this organization together to go cheer on athletes at Purdue at the Olympic Games is humbling. They even to the point where they helped organize a fundraiser to help send my family to the London Games. But you hear the stories of what they did. One of the prelims, I don't know, they missed one of them and they watched it, and Morgan said at this random pub in London, he went up to him and said, you need to change this to the diving, because we're going to watch and cheer on David Boudia. And probably one of the sweetest memories I have from those games that I can reflect on is when I was standing on the middle podium and I had the family to the left of me, but I looked to the right and John Purdue Club and Morgan, and all of them pushed past all these people, and they were like front row to the side. And so I don't know, you realize that you would not be able to accomplish everything you accomplish on your own. And so that was a reflection of the Purdue love that I had and my family to the other side of me. But it was funny. The way he wanted to look at me as a person and continue to say, like, it's awesome to win a gold medal, but keep going. Don't settle for X, Y, Z. And there's bigger things. So what does life look like after diving? And so he was always asking me what that looked like, because I couldn't dive forever. So what's your plan?
Yeah.
And I think what embodies his work ethic perfectly is he retires from Purdue Athletics as the AD,
Yeah.
but he's still working hard to the bone. You know, I don't remember exactly what field he was in, but for 4 years I thought he was doing something with distance learning. And
I
but
was
he
Purdue
was
Global.
global, yeah.
Yeah, he was doing. He was a vice president for direct, kind of on special assignment, and still working a fair amount with the Purdue Global Initiative. And yeah, it's still going at it at the same. If and I wasn't in the room with him, but certainly, as I understand it, very much the same pace. That didn't change.
I would challenge someone to find a more devout Purdue fan than Morgan.
Yeah, I think that's a certain guarantee. When you look at that, and there's so many have talked about the fact that he has always been, knew everybody, knew the walk-on swimmer as much as he knew David Boudia. What has that taught you in terms of how you're moving forward from a leadership standpoint? You're certainly going to be in that position. You are in that position now. People look up to you. What's that lesson there?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is Morgan, because of his leadership. The reason why he was able to accomplish things is because he valued relationships. And so he made sure that he put it as an importance to build relationships with people around him. And, whether or not like this walk-on Purdue swimmer or this random track and field at, like he wasn't looking for a transaction. Like, I'm going to give you my friendship and talk to you as a leader because I'm expecting something from you. He did it because he wanted to know what the student athletes needed and what they needed to do to be at the most competitive prime of their season. And so I think, going back to your question, the biggest thing is that I take away is how I could see Morgan wanting to know people on a personal level, not just like a wave and then that's it.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very much of a common thread in terms of that. Other stories or background things that you remember that you will smile when you think of Morgan. Obviously, you talked about 2012 and that great competitive moment, but Morgan was always, at least in my experience, also a guy that sometimes student athletes had fun with, sometimes poked fun with too, sometimes, because he's kind of that guy. But from your experience, the fun things that may have been a little bit off the radar that you recall that were important to you.
At first you go to an athletic director and you're intimidated by him. So I was intimidated by Morgan, but just as I continue to get to know more at the pool, I think probably most fun memories I have is when Adam Soldati and I and Morgan crossed paths at the pool, and there's some banter going on and hard time. And I think, I don't know, that kind of brings you closer as guys. But the thing that as he got older, the more and more he walked out of that locker room to go to a swim lane, like the more he waddled or crept over it. But it was like with Morgan, you would talk to him Friday and you would never know anything was wrong because he was still swimming every single day and he was still working hard. And then I think that's what's hard to chew on with all of this, is that Friday you probably would have talked to him and you wouldn't think anything was wrong with him.
Yeah. I know it was frustrating to him with COVID-19 not being able to swim, and somebody had told this story. I think it was Kathy Wright-Eager, about him getting a Peloton. He didn't like. I mean, didn't love that.
He loves the water.
Yeah, which is God love him for that. That's as we all try to age and figure out new ways to exercise, he was ahead of the game from that standpoint. I'll give you a last word on Morgan, and then I'd like to add, just if you give our viewers a little update on where you are in your training and what's new with you. But anything else you want to add regarding Morgan?
I think most of what I said is what has been on my heart about him, but he is the epitome of a Boilermaker. And I think if you look at Morgan, you'll know what Purdue athletics is about, and really Purdue University. And I think his legacy will continue to live on far past when you and I are here.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Give us a quick update on your training and what's new with you, and how that all is going, and has COVID-19 made life more difficult for you with respect to that?
It's a loaded question, Alan. Because I think if this was my first Olympic Games, I would be freaked out and not knowing how to handle this whole adversity of a pandemic going on and the Olympics being canceled. With this being my fourth time around, it's kind of like a relief almost. Like, all right, I can step back, I can get more balance. I have another year to train and get that much better. And things are going to happen like this. Maybe not to this extent. No one expects something like this, but adversity will happen. And I'm curious what I think that's what defines an athlete with this is a good athlete and this is what a great athlete is how they're going to handle being locked in their house for 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And so there's always things that we could do in the midst of not being able to train, but we've been back now for about 2.5 weeks and I don't think I've ever been this sore ever. I had to take the morning off because I was holding a child, one of my kids, and I felt like my legs are going to give out. And so we're exhausted, but it gives you another, 14 months to get that much better. And with me transitioning events from the 10-meter platform to the 3-meter springboard, that will give me time where I can actually feel confident going into an individual event and thinking that I have a shot of being top 3 instead of it being a dream.
Yeah. I think that we've learned through this entire pandemic too, we can't plan. It's hard to plan for anything, but we have to be nimble and flexible. Well, hey, David, thanks so much for your time. I know this is a deeply personal and difficult time. And for that, I wish you well. And I'm sorry for your loss, because I know it's an extremely personal one. And for you and your family, we wish you all the best. But we always also appreciate the fact that you're a big star and you talk to us. So we love that too, but we're thankful for that. Best to you and yours. And we will have the Burke family certainly in our thoughts as well.
Alan, I appreciate it very much. Boiler up.
All right. Thank you.